My name is Cassie Harlow. I was 28 years old the morning my sister-in-law decided I was the perfect punchline for her Instagram story. Not a private text, not a whispered complaint to my brother. A story, with graphics, with a little poll at the bottom that said finally free, and the options were, "You says, huff, and took long enough." I was sitting in the parking lot of my new apartment complex, engine still running, waiting for the building manager to bring down my key fob. I had 2 suitcases in the trunk, a laundry basket wedged into the back seat, and a box of kitchen things I'd wrapped in dish towels because I ran out of bubble wrap. I was not sad. I was not scared. I was genuinely looking forward to the first morning I could make coffee without someone commenting on how I loaded the dishwasher. Then my phone buzzed. It was a screenshot. One of my college friends had sent it without any message, just the image. My sister-in-law, my brother's wife, the woman who had been living in the same house as me for 2.5 years, had posted a story of the empty guest room. My room. The bed stripped, the closet open, nothing left. And the caption over it read, "The charity case finally checked herself out. Time to turn this back into a home office." Hey, she had tagged 3 of her friends. The poll already had 64 votes. Yes was winning by a lot. I stared at it long enough that my screen dimmed. Then I took a screenshot. I saved it. I went upstairs, got my key fob, thanked the building manager, and started unpacking my dishes. Because 8 days later, the same woman who posted that story was going to call me from a gas station parking lot, crying so hard I could barely understand her, asking me to please, just log in one more time. She didn't know what else to do. I need you to understand something before I tell you what happened in those 8 days. I need you to understand what I actually was in that house, because the story my sister-in-law told her followers and the story that was actually true were so far apart they might as well have been about 2 different people. My brother, his name is Derek, bought his house 4 years ago. He's a good guy. Genuinely, he works in logistics management, keeps weird hours, travels for stretches. He married his wife. I'll call her by her relationship to me, because that's all she ever really was, about 3 years back. She's in event planning, loves aesthetics, runs a small local business doing wedding coordination and styled shoots. She is very good at the parts of it that people see. She is not good at the parts no one sees. When I moved in 2.5 years ago, it was because I'd left a job that turned toxic fast and needed a few months to stabilize. I paid reduced rent, which I want to be clear about. I paid rent. It wasn't much, but it was agreed on, in a text thread I still have. I was not a guest. I was not charity. I had a number I sent to my brother's Venmo every first of the month. What happened over those 2.5 years was something that crept up on me so gradually I didn't see the shape of it until I was already deep inside it. I have a background in operations and systems. My last real corporate job was as an operations coordinator for a mid-sized marketing firm. I'm good at the invisible machinery of things, the processes, the automations, the scheduling logic, the client communication flows that make a business look seamless from the outside. After I left that job, I started freelancing, slowly at first, then steadily. By the time I moved into Derek's house, I had 4 regular clients and a system that let me work from anywhere with a laptop and a reliable internet connection. My sister-in-law noticed that pretty quickly. The first time she asked for help, it was innocent enough. She double-booked 2 vendor walkthroughs for the same Saturday and was panicking. I spent 45 minutes restructuring her calendar and drafting the rescheduling emails for her. She was grateful. She brought home a candle from TJ Maxx and left it outside my door with a sticky note that said, "You're a lifesaver." That was month 2. By month 6, she had started CCing me on client emails automatically, not asking, just doing it, like I had joined the company. By month 12, I was building her client intake forms, managing her vendor contact spreadsheet, writing the copy for her website service pages, and troubleshooting whatever her online booking system broke itself into every other week. Her business had grown. She went from 8 events that first year to 22. She genuinely believed that was because of her talent, and maybe some of it was. But a lot of it was because the back end had stopped being a disaster, and she didn't know who fixed that because she never asked. I did it because she was family. I did it because it was easier than having the conversation about stopping. I did it because every time I tried to pull back, something broke, and she'd appear in the doorway of my room with her laptop and a look that made me feel like refusing was a character flaw. My brother knew I helped her sometimes. He didn't know the scope of it. He travels. He's tired when he's home. He trusted that the women in his house were getting along. We were, just not the way he thought. When I finally decided to move out, it was not because of anything dramatic. It was because I signed a lease on a 1-bedroom 2 miles away and the math worked out. My freelance income had grown enough. I gave 30 days notice like a reasonable adult. My sister-in-law smiled and said she was happy for me and asked if I wanted to keep some of the pantry staples since I'd be starting fresh. What she did not say in any of those 30 days was, "Hey, can you help me understand the systems you've been running for me before you go?" She didn't say that because she didn't know she needed to. She thought the systems ran themselves. The morning of moving day, she posted that story before I'd even finished loading my car. I found out later she'd been venting to her friends for weeks about how I'd been freeloading, which was interesting because I had paid rent for 30 consecutive months, done thousands of hours of unpaid operational work for her business, and once spent an entire Sunday redoing her tax prep spreadsheet because her accountant had flagged inconsistencies. But that's the thing about invisible work. When you do it well, the person receiving it doesn't see labor. They see results. They assume the results are just happening. They start to believe they created the results themselves. And when you leave, they don't think about what they'll lose. They think about the parking spot opening up. I unpacked my kitchen that afternoon. I made dinner in my own space for the first time in 2.5 years. I didn't eat it at someone else's table, or time it around someone else's schedule. I sat on my floor with a bowl of pasta and listened to the specific silence of a space that was entirely mine. My best friend, her name is Rachel, called that evening. She didn't say hello. She just said, "I saw it. Are you okay?" I told her I was fine. She said, "You're not going to respond?" I said, "Not yet." She was quiet for a second. Then, "Cass, they have no idea what's about to happen." "I know," I said. That's the part that's almost funny. Rachel was the only person besides my clients who knew what my actual workload had looked like for the past 2.5 years. She'd seen me on calls at 11 at night troubleshooting my sister-in-law's booking software. She'd heard me rewrite vendor contracts on a Sunday because there was a clause that would have charged my sister-in-law a cancellation fee she couldn't cover. She knew because I'd complained and then immediately felt guilty for complaining and then gone back to fixing the thing anyway. "Are you going to tell them what you were actually doing?" she asked. I looked at the story screenshot still open on my phone. The poll. The little champagne glass emoji. "Eventually," I said. "Not yet." The next morning, I went through everything methodically. I wasn't angry when I did it. Anger would have made me sloppy. I was just deliberate. I removed myself as an admin on her website backend. I revoked my access to the shared Google Drive folder where I'd been storing her templates, contracts, and client communication logs, files I had built, organized, and maintained. I turned off the forwarding rule on the support email address I'd set up for her inquiry form, the one that was quietly routing to my personal inbox so I could catch anything that fell through. I archived the automation sequences I built in her email marketing account and unlinked my account from hers. I unsubscribed myself from the vendor notification lists I joined on her behalf to monitor pricing and availability. Then I opened a document and wrote a clear, professional summary of every operational function I had been performing, unpaid, for her business. I organized it by category: client communication management, website and booking system maintenance, vendor coordination, contract review, email marketing, and miscellaneous administrative support. I added approximate hours per month in each category. The total across 2.5 years came to somewhere between 800 and 1,000 hours, conservatively. I saved the document. I did not send it. Not yet. I had a pretty good sense of how the next several days would go, because I knew her business calendar better than she did. I knew what was coming due and when the gaps would start showing. Day 2 was quiet. That's how it always starts. Absence looks like peace at first. Day 3, her booking system sent an automated error report to the admin email, my old admin email, which now went nowhere. A prospective client had tried to submit a deposit through the contact form, and the payment integration had timed out. It was a bug I'd patched 3 times before. Without me watching that inbox, the error sat there. I know this because the prospective client eventually emailed me directly, having found my name somewhere in the site's old footer credit that my sister-in-law had apparently never thought to update. The woman asked politely if I was still the contact for Harlow events. I'd used my last name as the business support alias because I hadn't thought through how permanent that might seem, and whether I could help her reschedule her consultation. I wrote back gently that I was no longer associated with the business and gave her the direct email. I did not forward it to my sister-in-law. I made dinner. I slept well. Day 4, my brother texted me. Not about the story. Not about the business. He texted, "Hey, hope the move went okay. You settled in?" I told him yes and that I liked the apartment. He sent a thumbs up. That was the whole conversation. Day 5, the first real crack appeared. My sister-in-law had a styled bridal shoot that Saturday. A big deal. A real investment. The kind of thing she used to build her portfolio and pitch to higher-end clients. She had 3 vendors coming, a rental company delivering furniture, and a photographer she'd been trying to lock in for 6 months. The rental company called her Friday afternoon to confirm the delivery window. She had the wrong date in her calendar. I know this because she had texted me, and I mean she actually texted my number, not an email, not a mutual friend, my actual phone. At 4:37 p.m. on Friday, "Hey, did we confirm Saturday delivery with Riverside Rentals or Sunday?" Just like that. No acknowledgement of the Instagram story. No, "Hey, how's the new place?" Just a logistics question sent to the person she just publicly called a charity case, as if that story had never existed. I read the message. I put my phone face down on the counter. I finished making my coffee. Day 6. The styled shoot happened without the furniture arriving on time. I know because one of the vendors posted about it vaguely on her own Instagram, something about logistical surprises and making it work with a string of cheerful hashtags that couldn't quite hide the stress underneath. My sister-in-law's story that day was conspicuously blank. That afternoon, Rachel came over with a bottle of sparkling water and leftovers from the Thai place near her office. We sat on my floor because I still didn't have a couch yet, and she read the text message my sister-in-law had sent. "She really just asked you like nothing happened," Rachel said. "Yep." "What did you say?" "Nothing." Rachel set down her fork. "Cassie." "I know. This isn't just about her being mean," Rachel said. And she had this look she gets when she's figured something out before you have. She needed an audience when she posted that. She needed people to agree with the story she'd been telling about you. Because if they agreed, she didn't have to feel guilty about how much she'd taken. I thought about that for a long time after she left. She was right. The story wasn't about venting, it was about building a record, about getting the audience to co-sign a version of events before the bill came due. Day 7, my sister-in-law called my brother while he was on a work trip in Cincinnati. He called me 20 minutes later. "Hey," he said carefully. "She's saying some stuff isn't working right with the business website." "Okay," I said. Pause. "She was asking if maybe you could take a look." I kept my voice even. "Derek, I'm not working for her anymore." Another pause, longer this time. "I didn't know you were working for her." "I know," I said. "That's sort of the point." He didn't say anything for a moment. "Then, how bad is it?" "I don't know yet," I said. "Ask her." He called back 2 hours later. He sounded different. Quieter in a way that meant he'd had a conversation that rearranged some things for him. "She said you used to handle a lot of the back-end stuff." "I handled all of it," I said. "For 2.5 years. Silence. "I didn't know that," he said finally. "I know. Why didn't you say anything?" "I tried a few times. It was easier to just fix it." I paused. "Also, she posted that story before my car was out of the driveway." He didn't have an answer for that. I didn't need him to. Day 8 started at 6:14 in the morning, which was when my phone started ringing. It was my sister-in-law's number. I let it ring. She called again at 6:31. I let that one ring too. At 6:48, she sent a text that was long enough that my screen showed just the first line before cutting off. "Cassie, I am so sorry. I know I shouldn't be reaching out like this, but I don't know what." I set the phone on my bathroom counter and took a shower. When I came out, there were 4 more missed calls, 2 more texts, and a voicemail. I poured my coffee first. Then I sat down at my kitchen table and listened to the voicemail. She was in a parking lot somewhere. I could hear traffic in the background. She was crying, real crying, not performance crying, the kind where your breath keeps catching and you can't control the pace of it. She said a client had emailed threatening to dispute a deposit because her confirmation hadn't gone through and she'd never followed up. She said the booking page was showing an error and she didn't know what platform it even ran on. She said she'd found a folder in the shared drive called Client Intake Archive and didn't know what it contained or where the password was. She said she had a vendor meeting in 2 hours and she couldn't find the contract template. She said she was sorry for the Instagram story, she'd taken it down, she knew it was awful. Then she said the thing that landed hardest. I didn't understand how much you were doing. I genuinely didn't know. I sat with that for a while. Then I called her back. She picked up on the first ring, her breath still unsteady. I did not rush to reassure her. I let the silence sit for a moment because she needed to be in it, just briefly, before I spoke. Tell me what's on fire first, I said. She walked me through it. The booking error, the missing client, the contract template, the vendor meeting. As she talked, I made notes, not because I was going to fix everything, I wasn't, but because I wanted to understand exactly what she knew and didn't know about her own business. The answer was, not much. When she finished, I said, okay, before I say anything else, I need to say something. She went quiet. That story was public humiliation. You called me a charity case in front of your followers, your friends, and anyone who happened to see it before you took it down. I had been running the operational backbone of your business for 2.5 years without a single dollar in payment. And you posted that before my car was gone. She started to cry again. I'm not saying this to hurt you, I said. I'm saying it because I need you to actually hear it, not just feel bad and move past it. Hear it. I hear it, she whispered. Good. Then I told her what came next. I was not moving back. I was not restoring access. I was not fixing anything out of guilt by the end of the day. If she wanted professional help, real help, structured help, she could hire me. My rate for operational consulting and systems management was $95 an hour. I would build her a transition document at that rate, covering every system she needed to understand, what it did, how to maintain it, and what to do when it broke. She could hire an ongoing VA to manage the daily work, and I would train that person, also, at rate. She would also post a public correction, not an elaborate apology performance, just the truth. That I had not been a freeloader, that I had contributed substantially to her business, that the story she posted was wrong. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "What do I even say? I don't know how to explain it without it sounding, say what's true," I said. You don't have to make it pretty. She posted it that afternoon. It wasn't eloquent. It was short and a little awkward, and clearly written by someone who was embarrassed rather than someone who'd had time to craft a narrative. It said she'd posted something unfair about her sister-in-law, who had actually been a significant help to her business, and that she was wrong to have framed it the way she did. Some of her followers were kind about it. Some were skeptical. One person commented, "Lo, what happened?" And another said, "Good for you for owning it. It wasn't a redemption arc. It was just a correction." My brother called that evening. He said he'd seen the post. He said he was sorry he hadn't paid closer attention to what was going on in his own house. He sounded like a man who had spent the day reckoning with something uncomfortable, and I respected that he sat in it instead of trying to explain it away. "How much did she take from you?" he asked. Not accusatory, just trying to understand. "In hours, somewhere around 8 to 1,000, I said. "I have the documentation." He exhaled slowly. "I'll pay you," he said. "Derek, I mean it. Send me the number." I thought about it. "Let me think about what's fair." "Whatever you decide," he said. "I trust you." That one surprised me more than any of the apologies. Over the following 2 weeks, I built the transition document. 46 pages. Every platform, every login structure, every automation sequence, every vendor contact, every recurring task, organized by frequency and priority. I charged for every hour. My sister-in-law paid the invoice without negotiating a single line item, which told me she finally understood what she'd been getting for free. I found her a virtual assistant through a referral network, a woman who does administrative and operational support for small event businesses and charges a fair rate for it. I spent 3 hours on a handoff call training her. I charged for those hours too. The booking error got resolved. The client dispute was handled. The vendor meeting happened, late, but it happened. I did not take my sister-in-law on as an ongoing client. That boundary held. Some things, once broken, need space rather than continuity. We are not close. We are cordial when we're at the same table, which is not often. I think that is probably the honest version of what this relationship will be, and I've made peace with it. What I have not made peace with, not in a bitter way, just in a clear-eyed way, is how long I let myself be used without naming it. I told myself I was being generous. I told myself it was easier to just fix it. I told myself that family meant absorbing things that would be unacceptable from a stranger. None of that was generosity. It was avoidance dressed up as kindness. And the person it hurt most was me, because I spent 2.5 years making someone else look competent, while she saved her contempt for the moments I wasn't in the room. Rachel came over the week after everything settled. We finally got a couch by then. We sat on it like normal people, and she asked me how I felt. I thought about it honestly. Lighter, I said, and a little stupid for taking so long. You weren't stupid, she said. You were trying to be a good person in a house that wasn't tracking what that cost you. I looked around my apartment, at the walls I picked, at the coffee situation I'd set up exactly the way I wanted it. At the desk in the corner where my actual clients, the ones who pay me, were waiting on deliverables that I would finish on my own schedule, in my own quiet, without anyone knocking on my door because something was broken. The lesson isn't that you should never help family. Help your people. Show up for them. Be the person they can call. But help them as yourself, with your name on it, with your time accounted for, with your value acknowledged out loud. The moment you start helping from a place of invisibility, you have handed someone else the authority to define what you're worth. And people who are used to receiving invisible labor tend to dramatically undervalue it right up until the moment it stops. My sister-in-law thought she was posting about a freeloader. She was actually documenting the moment she lost the thing holding her business together. She just didn't know it yet. The poll, by the way, ended up 68-12. Yes, won by a lot. Most of those 68 people had no idea what they were agreeing to. They just saw a mostly empty room and a woman with a champagne emoji who seemed relieved. Sometimes public opinion is just whoever posts first. Sometimes the joke is only funny until the person it's aimed at stops laughing and starts keeping records. I kept very good records. I've thought a lot about the word freeloader since all of this happened. About how confidently she used it. About how 68 strangers voted yes on a poll about my life without knowing a single true thing about it. Here's what I've figured out. People don't mock what they understand. They mock what they've decided not to look at. My sister-in-law never asked what I did for her business because asking would have required her to see it, and seeing it would have meant acknowledging that the version of herself she presented to the world, competent, self-made, thriving, was being quietly held together by someone she'd chosen to look down on. It was easier to call me a charity case. It cost her nothing, right up until it cost her everything. That's not karma in any mystical sense. That's just cause and effect playing out on its natural schedule. When you build your life on top of someone else's invisible labor and then humiliate that person publicly, you are not just being cruel. You are also removing the one thing standing between you and the consequences of your own incompetence. She didn't lose her business systems because I was punishing her. She lost them because I stopped covering for choices she'd never been held accountable for. The punishment was always already there. I had just been absorbing it on her behalf. What I wish I'd understood earlier, and I say this about myself, not to be hard on myself but to be honest, is that staying silent about the value of your own work is not humility. It feels like humility. It feels like being the bigger person, the one who doesn't need the credit, the one who just shows up and does what needs doing. But over time, silence about your own value teaches the people around you that your value doesn't exist. I taught my sister-in-law that lesson for 2.5 years. She learned it well. The intelligence piece, and I think this matters, is knowing the difference between patience and passivity. What I did in those 8 days was not passive. I was watching, documenting, understanding exactly what would happen and when. That kind of clarity only comes from knowing your own work deeply. You cannot advocate for the value of something you don't fully understand yourself. Part of what had kept me silent for so long was that I'd internalized the family narrative just enough to doubt whether what I was doing really counted. The transition document I built, 46 pages of systems, processes, and operational logic, was the first time I'd seen my own work laid out in full. It was clarifying in a way I hadn't expected. Rachel told me once that the most dangerous thing you can do for someone who undervalues you is make it comfortable for them to keep doing it. I didn't understand that fully until I was sitting in my own apartment, in the quiet I had chosen, watching the missed calls stack up. Cassie Harlow did not become a different person in those 8 days. She just stopped performing smallness for people who had gotten used to it. That's the whole story. And it's enough.